Hey everybody, it's Bob Ost, and this is Friday, and it's our Friday Community Gathering, Theater Resources Unlimited. Those of you who don't know us, we're an arts services organization that tries to train and support people in the business side of the arts, although we also help the artists, but we help the artists to navigate the business a little bit better, and we help producers, and we help everybody that makes theater happen. We've been doing this for 30 years. Those of you who've never heard of us and are going to say, what? They've been doing it for 30 years and I've never heard of them. Don't know how to explain it, but that's what it is. We've been here for a long time doing this. And welcome to you if you're new to us. And I hope that you'll think about actually being part of the community. We do this as a community service. We started it April 17th, 2020. So I think this is something like our 192nd consecutive interview programming today. We did it because COVID told us to go into quarantine and be miserable. And we said, no, we won't. We're going to have a community anyway. And so people come in this room every week, every Friday, and we basically have conversations and talk to people about different aspects of theater. Not adverse to talking about music business, not adverse to talking about dance or even film, but we're pretty theater focused in some ways. Nowadays, there's really such a lot of crossover between the arts anyway, and especially after going through 4 years of shutdown and everybody having to discover virtual and this medium we're on right now. Particularly, I think we particularly have learned lessons over the past three and a half years, and I think we know that there are some interesting fine lines between video and film and theater and live performance. And we're learning how to sort of balance it all. Today, we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about yet, probably because I don't know a whole lot about it. It's hip hop. I mean, I'm a theater guy, and I've watched hip hop try to come in and make its statement and on Broadway and other commercial wet productions. And it's been a long time getting here, but I think it's finally here, and I think we're going to talk to a couple of people who are pretty much in that world, in the hip hop world, to talk about what it's like to combine theater and hip hop, and what can hip hop bring to theater, and what does theater bring to hip hop? Who knows? There might be some interesting answers. So, without any further comments from me, I'm going to bring in Patrick Blake, Masta Ace, and Power, who's using his last name Power Malu today. Hello, Power. How are you? We see the bottom of your face. We don't see the top of you. You're in transit, right?
Yeah, I'm in transit. I'm basically doing what I've been doing for the past year and a half, is trying to give back to those that are less fortunate. And so using my talents and my platform to try to help people that are being abandoned and neglected in our great city of New York. So right now I'm in a truck bringing donations to the different distribution sites so that the migrants that are coming to New York City actually have some warm clothing on while they desperately wait for a bed in New York City.
Well, I think it's an unexpected but interesting way to start this conversation, because from what I know, I think hip hop is very much community based, and it really
right.
is. It really is a voice of the community, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's meet Masta Ace as well, and then we'll meet Patrick Blake, the guy that I really actually do know. So Masta, you new to me. Hello, how are you?
What's going on, Bob? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I've been in the music business. I started in 1988, and my first album came out in 1990. I've dropped something like 14 studio albums since that time. And I've been fortunate. I've been one of the few artists that have been fortunate enough to go through 3 different decades of releasing music and still continuing to garner new fans along the way. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to tour the world extensively, even to this day after all these years.
Well, we'll go into some of the specifics a little later, but thank you. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate it very much. Patrick Blake, I know
Yes.
you. I know you.
Um,
Patrick
and
Blake is on our advisory board. We get
board of directors.
board of directors. Yeah,
I
I mean
get
our
to
board of
vote.
directors.
I
Said
get to
advisory
vote.
board. I sorry about that. Yeah, board of directors, and has been for quite a while. He's one of our most valued board members after it's got to be over 10 years or more
Mhm.
that you've been with us. So not sure, were you in hip hop when I first met you? Was that something you
No.
did first as I know you?
Mm-mm.
So tell us a little bit about your journey into hip hop.
Well, I did produced a show called The Exonerated in 2003, and it was about a group of people who had been unjustly convicted. And I wanted the message to get out more and thought that one way of doing it is to musicalize the concept of unjust conviction. And so I, with a rapper in Chicago named Shy Ill, wrote a musical about unjust conviction, a hip hop musical. He wrote the music, I wrote the book. And then we went around looking for people to give us money to do it, and got a lot of, I'd love to be in it, but I don't have any money to give you. And so I thought about, how do I solve that issue? And the idea that I came up with is to create a company called Rhymes Over Beats, which is a hip hop theater coalition. And our mission is to reunite theater music and popular music, which was the case up until the 60s, when theater music and popular music went different directions. And our goal is to bring them back together using hip hop as the dominant musical form, popular form now.
So I want to talk a little bit about hip hop. I want to actually help people understand a little bit about it. There are different forms of hip hop. Can we talk about a little bit about the different forms there are out there? There's gangster rap. Let's start by talking about what's the difference between hip hop and rap. Because I think I know that answer, but I think I'd like to hear it from Masta Ace if you can do it.
Well, there's no distinction between hip hop and rap. Hip hop is the culture. It's the culture that encompasses rapping, DJing, breakdancing, graffiti art, beatboxing, and numerous other aspects. But that is the overall umbrella that hip hop. Rap is an act, something that
Right.
within hip hop that you do. KRS said it many years ago. Rap is something you do. Hip hop is something you live.
That's exactly, that's it. That's perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about, first of all, Masta Ace and Power. What interests you about theater? Why are you willing to join Patrick in the journey of bringing hip hop into theater? Curious, just any answer you have? Power, do you have an answer?
So I come from the background of theater, of performing on a stage. I am an actor. I'm a trained actor. Hip hop is something that I grew up around, and mixing the two is synonymous. It's not something that was difficult for me. I come from the background of a organization called the Lyricist Lounge, which was a hip hop showcase that happened in New York City, and I hosted a lot of those shows. Because I used to have a public access television show called My Life Television, where I actually did a lot of sketches. So I acted out sketches, and then we interviewed a lot of artists that were involved in creating hip hop music. And so being able to merge those two, I got an opportunity to actually help create a show called the Lyricist Lounge Show, which was on MTV for 2 seasons. In that show, we actually did live theater performances where we had a live studio audience that would watch us perform these sketches where the dialogue was actually in rhyme. So when you think about hip hop and you think about how we tell the stories of the streets and we're sort of reporters of what's going on, we're always thinking of different ways of how we can perform in a way where people can see and understand what's happening, even if they're not from the area that we're talking about. So somehow I've always been around it. And so being able to actually be part of a theater group that specializes in bringing forth and producing hip hop theater is something that I'm excited to be a part of. And I'm constantly looking for ways to tell people about it because I'm excited as to what's to come. You know, when you think about Hamilton, you know, I was at the Public Theater when Hamilton was being showcased. Lin-Manuel Miranda is someone who frequented these spaces that I used to host, like the New Yorican Poets Cafe and a lot of these venues in New York City. I'm a New Yorican, so my background comes from doing a lot of like Spanish and English and mixing it all together. And Lin-Manuel comes from that background. And so to see a show like Hamilton take off, I know that it's done in rhyme and some people may not look at it as it is hip hop, but it truly is hip hop. It's like the lyrics, the cadences that he uses and the inspiration that he has. And so it's time for us to be able to tell our stories within that realm.
And we were going to get to Lin-Manuel sooner or later. This is a little sooner, but I mean, your points are really well taken. I want to ask the same question to Masta Ace. You recorded something for us for the last year that when we honored Kate, Patrick, was that?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I think it was last year.
Yeah. So you're actually really in the thick of development of a hip hop show, right? Aren't you?
Yes, yes. We had 2 stage readings back in June, and that was previous to that we had several readings over Zoom. But the first actual stage reading was in June of 2023, and it was a great success, and it was a really amazing night for me to see these words come to life with actual trained actors on stage saying these words that I wrote.
Oh, okay. So I thought you were performing in it. So no, you wrote it, but you
No.
you let your baby go. You gave your baby over to the actors. Oh, good for
Absolutely.
you. Good for you. Not everybody is comfortable with that. It's a whole different experience when other people start performing your work.
It was amazing, and they did an excellent job.
I'm going to ask you a question because I have a lot of writers in the room. Not necessarily all of them involved in hip hop, but they're all writers and they're all creatives. What did you learn from handing your work over to other people and hearing it performed by other people? And was there anything? Was it great? Was it frustrating? Was it challenging? How did you feel?
It was there was a little anxiety leading into those rehearsals, because you know, as a writer, you're hoping that certain ideas, certain feelings in certain scenes come across the way you wrote them. But in a lot of cases, actors read the words on the page and they might interpret the feeling of that moment differently than how you envisioned it when you wrote it. And so there was some anxiety going in there, but after a couple of days of rehearsals, I realized right away that these actors and our director, you know, Todd Underwood, fully got the sentiment, the feeling, what I was putting on paper. And I think that says a lot about the writing, because almost to a person, as I'm watching these scenes be rehearsed and the director is explaining what's supposed to be happening in the scene, I'm sitting back amazed, like, it's not like I had, you know, he and I talked about this beforehand. He got it from the pages, and that was kind of a validating moment for me, because what he was telling these actors in terms of directing them, the sentiment in certain scenes and certain conversations, was exactly what I wrote, and I was like, wow, like this is coming through exactly the way I thought it would.
That's always exciting for any of us as writers when somebody actually gets your work.
Yeah.
And we've all, I think we've all been in the place where they didn't. It was like, no, that's not what I meant. It's like,
Right.
whoa, what's that? Where'd that come from? Patrick, let's talk a little bit about the path that hip hop has taken into theater, because there was a time when theater was I think was very resistant to it. And I I mean, I'll go out on a not too dangerous limb and say that I think that Lin Miranda kind of changed that. But I know there was Holler If You Hear Me, and there were other efforts to bring hip hop into the musical theater language, and they weren't as successful. And I want to go back to something that Power was saying as well. I want to talk about how it is that Lin Manuel successfully is using the hip hop form in theater. But let's start with the easier question of what was the road like getting hip hop to actually get into commercial theater?
Well, yeah, you're right. There was enormous resistance, and I think part of it is because it was a different musical tradition than people who wrote for musical theater were used to. I mean, a musical theater song was supposed to be written in the classic, 1920s to 1960s kind of musical idiom, and hip hop was radically different from that. Rock and roll was closer because it's melodic. I mean, one of the things that hip hop is it's not necessarily melodic, although music does help the words. And that, I think, was the resistance, because it was less melodic than people were used to. And it's something that's new, and people are uncomfortable around something that's new. And one of the things that Lin-Manuel did was he had a musical theater background, and so he could merge those things well. Most of the hip hop artists are not playwrights, so they know how to write a song, but they don't necessarily know how to structure a book. And that's one of the things that we did with Masta Ace, is we had Kate Camerata being the dramaturg to help him structure it according to musical theater conventions, which Lin-Manuel Miranda knew how to do because that's his background. But most hip hop artists don't have that background. And we're actively encouraging hip hop artists to get that kind of background with our help, because it will help them write their own shows.
Basically, with theater works in general, and drama, basically we're talking about dramatic arc. We're talking about things that that move the action. We're talking about structure, and it's not that many of us aren't talking about it or into it for the sake of it. We're in it because it's helps communicate. I think structure and some of the quote rules, and there are no real rules, but the quote rules of writing for musical theater are just aids to help communicate your thoughts and your feelings and your story to an audience. Now, one of the reasons why we have to do that to some degree is because the audiences are used to it. So there's no reason why we can't look at the possibly changing audience expectations and telling stories in different ways. But we're still I think we're still in a transition period right now with hip hop. I think it's accepted, if not quite embraced yet, in theater. Tell me, did I say anything in there that you disagree with, or
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
the one, this is going to sound terrible, but one of the things that will help is the people who grew up in the old musical theater tradition are aging out.
Oh, thanks.
All right. And the younger people who came, I mean, hip hop was 50 years old last year. And so
Which
people who had hip hop on their radio stations from the time that they were born are now 50 years old. If you were 20 years old when it started, you're now 70 years old. And as those people, as the kids get older, and start doing things like writing for theater, it'll become more accepted. If you write music, it's hard to get a decent paycheck, you know. And one of the ways to do it is to write for musical theater, because you can write your songs, put them in a show, the show is produced, and you're collecting royalties, and you don't have to do any more work, or you can go out touring. It's back in the teens and the 20s, in the 19-teens and 1920s, the only way musical theater or musical writers could make any money is to write for musical theater, because the only other option was to sell a lot of sheet music, and there wasn't a lot of money to be made in sheet music. It's similar now. There's not a lot of money in Spotify if you're writing music, so you have to tour.
I know, I've got the royalty checks to prove it.
Yeah, if you're a musical writer, you can tour to make money. We're giving another revenue stream to people who write hip hop, and that's our pitch to people who write hip hop is that we'll give you another musical, or we will give you another revenue stream.
Well, let's talk about content for a second. I think one of the characteristics of hip hop and rap has been that the content really comes right out of the experience of the culture, and in theater, the purpose of the songs in theater, as we're taught, is basically when a character reaches a point where they can't express themselves in words, they sing. So we're used to certain conventions in musical theater where people sing because they're expressing great emotion. Hip hop essentially, I think, is capable of doing the same thing. The thing that I question when we get to Lin-Manuel Miranda is that, to what extent is the content of Hamilton coming out of the culture, and in what extent was he able to impose the conventions of hip hop on history? Master, have you seen Hamilton?
Yes. Not in its entirety, but yes.
So what's your take on Hamilton in terms of
It's the latter. It's the latter that you said. It's him taking hip hop and imposing it on a historical time period, as opposed to the other way around.
So there's an element of hip hop that's not really present in Hamilton. No one says it has to be, but it's just not. It's not really. It's not
a hip hop story.
Yeah, it's not the voice of
story.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a hip hop story.
Right.
Patrick, do you think?
I would love to build on that. I just was on the theater boards this morning checking and there was a press release from a show that's being done in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it's an indigenous theater company called New Native Theater in Canada, but they're doing their show, and it's a hip hop version of Grease. So they're doing the Grease, but the songs are hip hop songs.
That's hilarious. Okay. Has anybody seen it yet?
It's just in St. Paul. So
oh God!
Unless you're in St. Paul or Minneapolis.
One of my best friends is in St. Paul. I'm gonna actually email right after this conversation to ask him if he's seen the hip hop Grease yet.
Yeah, it's called Bear Grease.
Bear Grease. Okay. So I'm not sure if Power is able to be with us. Power, are you there?
Yep.
Okay. So you talked about Hamilton with great enthusiasm, and there's no reason not to. I mean, I think most people are very enthusiastic about Hamilton. Do you agree with what Masta and Patrick and I are saying about the content of Hamilton not necessarily being a hip hop story, a community story?
I mean, it's clearly is historic, a lot of historic context. He's talking about a specific person and a time in history. For us, when you talk about hip hop, we have the capability of doing that, but we have our stories within our communities that we could bring forth to the theater. And the reason why I'm so excited when I speak about Hamilton is because it brought it to the audience that would never else would have been open to even trying it.
Oh yeah, it was
And
it was a breakthrough. It was a
so
breakthrough show.
auditory, being able to listen to the different cadences and the flows, those are all hip hop flows. Those are all inspired by a lot of MCs that he grew up listening to, and even the places that he frequented that I mentioned earlier, like the New York Poets Cafe, which you have a lot of poets and the way they perform and the way they say the words, and it's all theater based. But in order to be able to reach a certain level, it's Lin-Manuel, his history with theater, and then bringing forth something that he's able to tap into. So for us is now it's our turn to actually be able to tell our stories in that realm. And I brought up the public theater because when the show was being previewed, it was being previewed at the public theater, and when they had the party that they had, like the closing party before it went on to Broadway, I was also part of another show called Toast, where another friend of ours named Lemon Anderson was the playwright for that. And we were in the same room, and I had conversations with Lynn, and we spoke about our history and our background, and he admitted to where he got his inspiration from, which was those places that I mentioned, Lyricist Lounge, New York Poets Cafe. So I know that he comes from a good place and what he was doing with it. Now it's our turn to be able to use that sort of like layup or the alley-oop that he gave us to slam dunk it and basically bring it to more audiences. And that's exactly what we're doing with Masta Ace because of his background. And if you listen to his albums, they're very story-based. A lot of people love the sketches he does, the interludes in between, because he actually takes you on a journey in the different communities and the neighborhoods that you can actually relate to. And so this is an example of what's to come when you think about Rhymes Over Beats and the opportunity that we have now. And as Pat was saying, this is, hip hop is popular music in the sense that it's easy for the ear now because it's played everywhere. And now we have an opportunity to actually bring it to audiences on Broadway.
Other than Holler If You Hear Me, I'm blanking. There have been other hip hop shows that have come and gone before Hamilton. Can you think of any? And Holler If You Hear Me was a community story. It was telling a story about the community, I think, as I recall.
But it was Tupac's, one of the difficulties in getting an audience for that show, I'm thinking as a producer now, is that it didn't know its audience. People who were involved in theater weren't necessarily aware of who Tupac was. And people who knew who Tupac was and were involved in hip hop went to the show, and it's his lyrics, but they were backed by show tunes, traditional music.
They were backed by show tunes? Oh.
The lyrics were being done to show tunes.
So somebody actually wrote tunes to the hip.
Wrote the music. And so a hip hop purist who went and saw that went, no, that's not what it should be. It's not hip hop. It's Tupac's lyrics, but it's not his music. And that's it didn't get that audience, and it didn't get the theater audience because they didn't know who Tupac was necessarily. And that's why it didn't succeed.
And I think it's safe to say that people who perform hip hop truly, genuinely, and well are not necessarily the same people who are going to perform a song. The vocal range that you need for some Broadway shows is not necessarily what is needed for hip hop. It's basically a sense of rhythm and sense of word, word and meaning.
I went to a backers audition of it with a friend of mine, a traditional theater producer who took me because I was her hip hop expert, and she wanted to get my reaction. And my reaction was, I don't think people are going to buy tickets for this because it's not hip hop. and that's the audience for a Tupac musical.
So we're still trying to get to a point in theater where we can have a story that is from the community, that is done and dramatized using hip hop, this hip hop music style. So anything on the horizon that you know of, Patrick? Is
Yes.
Yeah, well, your show is on the horizon, right?
Yeah,
that's the one.
And
Absolutely.
I am working on a musical about the Irish diaspora in the 1840s, where the Irish were starving and dying of disease and coming to America to get away from that. And I thought that kind of story is a good use of hip hop music, even though it's historical.
Well, I mean, Hamilton was a good use of hip hop musical music. I mean, it's very well done, and it's dazzled people, and it only won a couple hundred awards. But
it's the story of how people deal with an oppressive situation. I think that's at the heart of hip hop.
Okay. I think there are people in the room who are also. I know there's a couple projects that people are thinking about that are trying to incorporate hip hop. It's not an easy move from being a musical theater writer to being a hip hop writer. It's not an easy move at all. There's a lot that I think that we need to understand and we need to learn about the form. So by the way, to the room, you know that there's a chat there, and the chat's there for you. The chat's there for you to ask questions. If you have a question or a comment, or you want to comment on something we're saying, or ask us something, you got Masta Ace and you got Power Heel and you got Patrick. And if you're thinking about doing a hip hop show and you have questions, here's the place to ask them. So put it into the chat and put a big Q at the beginning, so Ross can identify it as a question.
They got rid of them? Yeah. They're not, no, not the stroller. Oh, no.
I'm still thinking that I probably should have done more research, because I'm still thinking that something happened between Holler If You Hear Me and Hamilton. There's something between H and H. So
Definitely.
Anybody?
Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda had another one before him.
In the Heights.
Before that, the Heights, yes, in the Heights.
I'm not sure.
There was another one.
I think in the Heights was less obviously hip hop inspired. At least it was to me. Patrick, what are your feelings?
Well, I mean, it had different musical forms, but it's that weren't necessarily rap, but were still hip hop, because it grew out of the upper, the Columbia area and Washington Heights and things like that. But it grew out of that culture. So even though it's salsa, it's still, to me, it's still hip hop.
Yeah.
Okay. They were rapping in there. They were rapping.
And there's rapping in it too.
Yep.
Susan Crawford, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to, as they were talking early on, it occurred to me that one of the reasons Hamilton could be so successful was that it was grafting hip hop onto very familiar stories, at least anyone paying attention in history class in school. And that's what was so engaging about it, hearing those arguments and discussions rendered in this new and modern way. And then the other thought I had is, I can't remember if Two Gentlemen of Verona, going back a few years, was that more sort of hip hop for anyone who might have actually seen it. That was early 70s. And I'm young enough to remember when they first featured hip hop on PBS in the late 60s. So they were.
I'm gonna say something that I hope doesn't make Madison and Power's eyes roll, but I wouldn't say there have been moments of hip hop in theater, but I would say there have been moments of rap in theater, because I think hip hop, as we suggested earlier, really is more about the community and the culture, and we had raps. We've had raps. I mean, Sondheim did a rap in Into the Woods. The beans, beans, nothing but beans thing was kind of a cultural theater culture rap. And I always go back to the Music Man, the opening of Music Man, the Rock Island, what's it called? The train song at the beginning. It's all spoken rhythmic language, and it's as close as some of us can get to rap, really, in terms of our abilities to write it. So rap as a form has been with theater for a while. It's always like a specialty number. So now the big move is to see if we can get beyond that and maybe tell an entire story using rap.
There was a show at the Public called Venice, I think. It was basically Othello that was close to being a hip hop musical a few years ago.
Oh, and Kate is saying the bombity of errors.
Bombity of errors.
That's it. Yeah.
So but if they're all kind of experimental and people trying to figure out how to fit it together, and I think what will ultimately have to happen is another generation will have to come into theater in order for it to fully integrate.
Yeah, I agree with Pat as far as the new generation in theater. Whenever I still perform a one-person show called County of Kings, and we do it for high schools and colleges, and we don't think that enough young people get the experience of a theater performance. I think that the rules need to change a little bit. I think there needs to be a little bit more flexibility within when people go to theater and see a show, because I think when they start seeing shows that they can relate to, they're not necessarily going to be able to sit still and sit quietly and just watch things play out. They're going to actually be part of the show because their laughter, their commenting, all of that give and take where performers actually going to feed off of, is there's going to be a lot of that happening with theater performances, because I get it when I perform the one-person show. Another thing is that, as Patrick mentioned, getting lyricists together with a dramaturg is very important, because you're going to be able to tell these stories in rhyme and not just be rapping just to rap, or not just put words together to rhyme just to rhyme. They actually are going to be happening in pivotal moments in the story where you're going to be intrigued and listening, and the rhythm is going to change, and the cadences and the flows and all those things that have to do with keeping someone's attention. So all of those things are what's happening right now with the falling season and with other things that we're working on. But that's what you're going to be seeing an example of, so that more people can understand what needs to happen to get this into more theaters.
And along those lines, to a degree, there's always been a split between pop music and theater music, in that pop music can get away without necessarily telling a story or moving the action, because it's a song. It's just a song. In theater, when we have songs because they're supposed to be, we think, moving the action. So they have to go from point A to B, or point A to Z, if they can really travel. So that's another question, is adding to pop. I'm sorry, adding to hip hop, to rap, the concept of having a song actually move from one place to another, not just be about feelings and attitudes and what's going on, but actually motivate a character to get to the next step. I think that's a challenge. I think it's a challenge.
That was something that I had to learn in the process of me writing the falling season, because, and thanks to Kate, I was able to navigate that. But initially, the way I write my songs for my albums, there's no guardrails. I can just really kind of go wherever I want, just express different thoughts, feelings, things that maybe don't relate directly, but somehow have some, underlying meaning, or some triple entendre type wordplay that I like to do in my raps. But once I had to write for this musical, Kate quickly explained to me that you know, each song serves a purpose, and the purpose is to push the storyline forward. That the character, there's something that the character needs to say that's very emotional, that he has to rap or sing instead of say. And so I had to, you know, working with Kate for the last 5 years, you know, it was in a lot of ways, because she teaches it at the college level. In a lot of ways, it was like taking a course in college, as I'm learning this process. And not that she's teaching me how to write raps, but she's explaining to me what the guardrails are when you're trying to write a musical.
I'm so sorry Kate's not with us today. It would have been great to have her here.
Well, we talked about it, but she had school, so she couldn't do it.
Okay. Well,
She's teaching.
That sort of split that you were talking about happened in the 60s, because if you think of all the wonderful old standards that are in the Great American Songbook, they're all from musicals, and they all serve that purpose of moving a story along. But we don't listen to the whole musical. We just listen to the song and appreciate it for being a song.
Yeah, and it was easier to get away with songs that didn't necessarily move the action back then. I think we've grown accustomed in theater, at least, to songs that really work. They really work it. They do some work, and they get you from one point of emotion to another point of emotion, and they are the way the story is being told dramatically, and they are part of the arc and the shape of the storytelling. So there's a lot that goes into writing for theater. A lot that goes into it. It's very complicated.
You can appreciate the wordplay and the story of a song like Anything Goes without ever having seen Dames at Sea, for example.
And Anything Goes is from Anything Goes is from Anything Goes.
Yes, but you can, if you didn't know it was from a musical, you could still listen to it and say, "Oh, this is a great song.
Yeah.
It's a fun song." And I think people need the ear to have grown up with hip hop to appreciate that. And I think people will start writing, the hip hop artists like Lin-Manuel Miranda will start writing for theater, because that's where the non-touring money will be.
Well, Hamilton has definitely broken through. I think it's going to be a long process of acceptance. I think theater still has the theater going base is not necessarily a hip hop base, or people that actually understand hip hop.
40-year-old plus and white. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're like all white people. It's like, what can we do? It's who they are and who we are. But I think that it's worth examining and worth trying to move forward. And not everything is for Broadway anyway. It's another thing we should really mention. Public theater, I think, has incorporated pieces that use hip hop into their seasons a little bit more than I think you see them on commercial Broadway. Ross, can you jump in with some of the questions? Ross?
Yeah, hi. He's in the restroom. Sorry, didn't need to know.
Of course he is. Of course he is. It's the Christine Lottie moment. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have did Scott Sublet get his question? Does hip hop change the purpose of musical numbers? Do we answer that?
No, we didn't. We didn't even address it. Is that what the question says? Because I think I need Scott to explain the question.
Oh, we do questions?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's does hip hop change the purpose of musical numbers? It seems to me that hip hop songs narrate the show as opposed to dramatizing the show.
Okay, so there's multiple answers to something like that. It's basically, it depends on what your aesthetic is and who you are. I think Masta has basically suggested to us that Kate has been pushing him to use his hip hop in order to move action. So he's trying to fit what he does into what you're saying is the usual purpose of the songs in musical theater. Does it have to? I don't.
one of the things that I think hip hop does better, and this is an opinion that I got from Lin-Manuel Miranda from his Revolution book, is that so much of the necessary exposition in a play, that the information that you need to have to follow the story, can be done so much better using rap than it can be using a traditional song. Because like Alexander Hamilton, you've got that whole backstory in just one song. And it doesn't feel like exposition when you're listening to it.
Because it's playful and it's fun. I mean, one of the things that the rap is, it's just based in wordplay.
So it can be used to do exposition better than is being done traditionally, I think.
The thing I like about rap is the things that people find to rhyme that you would never in a million years would have rhymed. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Oh, and continue, Ross. Oh, voice of God.
Yes, I am. What kind of stories do you want to tell?
Is that directed to me?
I suppose so.
I think it's directed to both you and Power in terms of. I
Yeah.
think a better question is what stories do you want to tell, and what stories would you like us to tell using rap, using hip hop?
What I've tried to do, I mean, to me, it should tell the not so often told stories, which is what we do on mine, of a young Black man who is growing up in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Brooklyn, New York. His goal is to be the first in his family to go to college, graduate from college. He's an excellent student, and he sometimes feels out of place in his community. And so a lot of times when we think about, you know, hip hop and those neighborhoods, we don't think about the intellectuals in those neighborhoods, the kids that are actually going to class and handling their business in the classroom, and are looking to get a higher education and be the lawyers and doctors of this country. And so to me, it's about telling those seldom told stories, that we don't get from our hip hop music per se.
Well, I'm going to ask a dangerous, sort of creepy question.
Go for it.
Is there much in the white experience that would benefit from being told in the hip hop style, in the rap style? I mean, I don't know. Can it be a form that could be used by people with privilege?
Of course it can. Of course it can. The majority of the shows that I do around the world are attended by white people. The overwhelming majority. They are as interested in our stories as anyone. And so the answer to that is a easy yes. And I will just add that, for the 2 readings that we had back in June, there were actually several older white people who were from the Broadway side that kind of walked in, I think, very skeptical about what we were going to present. And from what I've been told from Kate and from Patrick and from others who are friends of these people, because I don't know these people, that they were blown away, that they actually were like, yo, this. And I was surprised. I liked the music. They walked in not expecting to like the music. And they were pleasantly surprised by what was presented to them. So I definitely think that there's room there for that audience to get this exposure, to try something new for a change.
And I think it's extremely important right now because, frankly, our country sucks right now, and the fact that they're banning books, and the fact that something they consider something something that I don't know where in reality they think something can be anti-woke, and that there's something wrong with actually being aware and sensitive to the cultural issues of people that are not yourself. I just don't know where this country's going. I
Right.
think that's going to be a roadblock in some ways for hip hop to come more into the mainstream, but maybe not. I'm just trying to imagine Ron DeSantis sitting and listening to a hip hop musical. I mean, what would he say? It was just, I don't know.
Can't imagine Ron DeSantis liking very many musicals that are current these days.
Imagine Ron DeSantis liking anything that makes sense.
Hip hop is pop right now. Like when you think about music, it's pop music. Hip hop music is worldwide. It's accepted by people worldwide. It is what people try to emulate worldwide. So it's just all about entering into this medium and being able to present it in a way where people will be able to be open to accepting this new form of music that is telling a story in a theater that is people may not be used to it. So that's the only challenge. But as far as like hip hop is already in everyone's home. Like I think that we accomplished that. I think with Lyricist Lounge, we accomplished it, you know, being on MTV at a time when hip hop wasn't as popular, but we were able to do sketches in the form of rhyme. And, you know, we have people like Tracy Ellis Ross, who got her break out of the Lyricist Lounge show. You know, we
didn't know that.
Yeah, we had artists like Common and Erykah Badu and CeeLo and you know, Slick Rick and a bunch of different artists that were able to actually try their hand in a form or a style that they themselves were never really imagined that they'd be doing. And it was hip hop theater. It was actually a live studio audience, and we were doing sketches where the dialogue was in rhyme. So it's just about making it happen and having a team around you that is supportive in the sense that they know that it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get people to accept it, but it's definitely the time. I think the time is now. I think that the road has been paved, and I think that people are ready for this new style or this new form of theater, which is hip hop theater.
Well, two things. Two Kates have said. One Kate says, "Do we think Ron DeSantis has ever set foot in the theater to see a play?" I actually suspect he has, but I understand the unlikelihood, how unlikely it would seem.
The Burt Reynolds Dinner Theater.
Yeah, really. And thanks for the conversation. If we worry about appealing to the far right in this country or anywhere, all art is doomed. And I'm afraid that there may be some truth in that as well. What are we going to do about the far right? Can we do a hip hop musical about the need to change this country?
Before we talk about the far right, I just want to also mention one of the elements of hip hop that was looked and frowned upon and looked down upon for years and years, and the beautiful art that was in the subways. And now these graffiti legends are able to be shown in the MoMA and whatever prestigious museum you want to talk about. And their art is being sold for millions of dollars around the world, when this was something that was totally rejected. Look, they called them vandals because they vandalized places. And now here we are, people that actually trade their artwork all across the globe for millions of dollars. Like, that's a prime example of something that comes from hip hop. It's one of the elements of hip hop that is now accepted. So I don't want to mention people like a Ron DeSantis or people or politicians, because they're not a representation of the people. You know, they may have the funding to promote themselves and market themselves, but when you think about music and art, I think it taps into the real people in this country. And I don't think that those are great examples for us to even think, you know, is he going to come and see a show? Who cares? Let's talk about.
I just hope all those people are voting. That's all I can say. I just hope they're all voting, because I just don't like what's happening to this country. I just have to say it. Any other what?
We didn't talk about 8 Mile. I think that 8 Mile would have been a great Broadway show if it was made. I thought it was a great musical with great lyrics. It represented hip hop. It represented a story that we can all relate to. And I think when I think about musicals, you know, and I think about Purple Rain, and I think about Once, and all of these different genres of music, I think that it's all about how it's done. And I think that, you know, I just encourage everyone, you know, to go and see, you know, the Fallen Season when it comes out, or to help promote it, because that's the most important thing. If we don't have the hype around, or the dollars to really promote something and make it as popular, I think that word of mouth is the most important thing, and the way that this is actually going to become something, you know, where the people get an opportunity to experience this, because we want to promote this as an experience. And as I mentioned earlier, we want more of the youth to have an opportunity to experience theater.
Well, I think that's a nice positive note to end on at 6:34. Do we have any questions that we haven't gotten to yet, Ross? Oh, I think, I'm sorry, Arcade Green asked whether we
yes.
should consider whether hip hop theater may not be as comfortable in traditional venues, and maybe it would do better in non-traditional venues. I think that's essentially what he was saying. It's like, maybe while we are continuing the plod towards Broadway and trying to get more acceptance on Broadway, there are non-traditional venues, and there are other places around the country and around our city that might be more open to hip hop shows.
I imagine that there are, and I imagine, like, I was thinking of Bear Grease, you know, people doing a indigenous hip hop musical in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm sure there are things in St. Louis. I'm sure there are things in Atlanta that nobody hears about it because we're so New York centric.
One of the challenges, which is the challenge that we have on all levels in theater, is basically attracting the audiences. I think it might be a slow process getting supportive audiences for hip hop theater, but hopefully people are becoming a little more and more open to it.
I think you'll be surprised.
Good. I'd love to be surprised.
Pleasantly.
Yeah, I would love that.
Bob, you saw the reading. Tell us your reaction of it.
The reading
of Ace's musical.
All I saw was what was presented at the benefit last year.
No, I thought you came to the readings in June.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I started imagining things.
It's another one of my blackout days. I must have been doing drugs. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think you will be asking some of the questions he's asking. We saw the reading. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Because
also realize that I'm asking the questions that I'm asking because I'm trying to anticipate the assumptions of the audience that I'm speaking to. I'm trying to get them to walk them through this as well.
No, definitely. I think it's more than just us trying to explain it. That's why I keep saying it's an experience, because we can say what it is, but it's more about actually getting there and sitting and then just kind of like seeing it come to life, with hip hop being the dialogue.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Patrick, is there any way that people can follow the progress of Masta Ace's show? Is there a website or something?
Yeah, it's rhymesoverbeats.org is the website for the company.
Okay.
And I mean, we are on, all of us are on Instagram and Facebook.
Ross or Jay, could you just type in rhymesoverbeats.org so everybody sees it and then gets it right? Okay, I'm just gonna thank you guys for being with us. I don't know if you can stay a little, because people love to meet our guests. If you can, then people go into breakout rooms and say hi to you and maybe ask you questions. Probably better questions than I can ask. Who knows? So let me just say thank you to everybody, the audience out there. Thank you to Patrick. Thank you to Masta Ace, and thank you to Power Malou for being with us today. And Thank you, audiences. Thank you, my community, for being with us again this week for the 194th or 192nd consecutive time. Out there, if you guys are out there and you find what we do interesting, if you want to be in the room and meet people and talk and ask questions, email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com, and we'll invite you every week. Next week we have originally we were going to be doing an introduction to our producer program next Friday, but that's been moved to February 2nd. Next Friday, Amy Todoroff and Montserrat Mendez are going to come here, and they're going to talk about indie theater. We've been trying to brand indie theater for it's like 20 years we've been working on this, and I've been part of the original movement to do this. It's a way of getting away from the branding of off-Broadway, which somehow makes you sound like something that doesn't quite make it on Broadway, and just actually celebrate the independent theater that we create in New York and around the country, actually, all the time. So we're going to talk about indie theater. We're going to talk about new things that are happening in indie theater, and we're going to talk about the Indie Theater Awards and all sorts of stuff like that. So join us next week, and join us the week after on February 2nd, and meet Jane Dubin, you all know in the room, but meet Jane Dubin and Dave Elliott, who are going to be teaching the producer program, and ask your questions about the program, and hopefully sign up for the program and be part of the producer development and mentorship program. A name that very few people except me can remember: producer development and mentorship program. So that's it all, everyone. And if you want to support the work that we're doing, don't let me stop you. Our website for taking donations can be reached by typing in TRU Donate, trudonate.com. That's trudonate.com. We have till January 31st to raise enough money for a matching grant that we have, and we could use about $2,800 more. So if you want to give like 20 or 25 or anything, or 2,800, please go to trudonate.com. Thanks, and hope to see you, and hope you'll join the community and be part of the conversations.